And how many people are we up to? Gosh, 68. All right. So I guess that's all the 40 people that signed up for this, plus a few extras. So welcome, everybody. Good to have you here with us. This is the first of two identical workshop sessions with the goal, each of them has the goal of helping the proposal teams who are writing in-kind contribution proposals write really good proposals this summer. There's some information here for you all. Just a reminder, we're doing this now. We're doing another one at 10:30 tomorrow. If you're here today, you don't need to come to the one tomorrow, although of course you're welcome if you really want to, but you'll just hear the same stuff all over again. Let's see what's on my... Let me go through these fairly quickly. You've seen these many times now before. We just talked about questions best to ask them on Slack. You can also ask them on Zoom and we'll pick them up there as well. And we're trying to provide many links wherever we can. The slides are posted on the session pages, and these slides themselves contain a lot of useful links. So at some point, maybe not now, but at some point you might want to download a copy for your records. Okay, and you've all been abiding by the code of conduct all week. Thank you very much. Let's continue to do that. All right, so before I jump into goals for today, we do have our director with us. Bob, did you want to say any words before we get started?
Just welcome. It's great to be here with you. I've been following along as Phil has been leading this tremendous effort with you all and the CEC. Very excited about the contributions that you all are proposing, and so looking forward to helping you make that a reality and making sure that we bring in the international colleagues that have been with us for so long.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, so let's see, we've got a little under an hour together today. What we thought we would do is sort of go over the overview of the emerging Rubin LSST in-kind program. Look ahead to what's going to be happening in the fall in terms of reviewing the proposals that all of you are going to be writing, and see how that's going to lead into a period where we'll be working on setting up data rights agreements. We thought it would be a good idea to try and explain the feedback you've received. It's come in a couple of forms, and so we should talk through that. And then we thought it'd be useful to walk through an example proposal. In fact, all of you have this example proposal already. It's the document that you'll be writing your actual proposal in. But we wanted to walk you through it, and in particular show how the bits of text that you write in it will get turned into the pieces of your eventual data rights agreement. So for today, those are our goals. We assume you've read parts of the handbook, but not all 55 pages of it. And so we'll try and provide sort of introductory pointers to the most important parts of it, and then try and spend at least half of our time today hearing your questions and trying to answer them. There will be some that we won't be able to answer, but we'll write them down and then get back to you. We're trying to think of this session as the starting point for a summer-long conversation about your proposal. Okay, so let's jump in. You received the feedback on July 31st. This is feedback written by Rubin staff and the CEC. And now our job together is to turn your letter of intent into a proposal. So where are we right now? You see 79 people in this section. We actually had 40 international teams, international meaning outside of the US and Chile. 40 teams from 27 countries looking to make in-kind contributions in return for LSST data rights. So this is a big international community that we're all part of. The letters that you wrote contained quite a wide variety of ideas for in-kind contributions. It took us a while to work our way through them all and understand them. Back in the winter, you recall that the US agencies, the NSF and the DOE, who are the owners of the LSST data, they approved for further development most of those LOIs, kept a couple back for further investigation. But if you're here today, I think it's because you're now looking to turn your LOI into a proposal. So we have 6 weeks from today through to the proposal deadline to make this transformation from your LOI ideas into a full proposal. So to help that go quickly and efficiently, we tried to give you some tools. The first is we've given the leads of your teams a Google document for you to work in. It has follows a template, and it has example text in it and instructions in it. Instructions are in purple. The example text looks like the kind of thing you might write yourself. And we hope that that helps you write efficiently. So not too much, not too little, capture the right information and no more. We've also given you this handbook. I said it's 55 pages. It includes itself several example proposed contributions. The link to the handbook that's in your proposal document is actually a link to the live version of the handbook, which means that what we can do on our side is during the next few weeks, if we come up with ideas for more useful examples, we can put them in the handbook so that you can all see them. So we'll evolve that handbook as we go and try and keep it as useful as possible. Okay, so you've got the proposal document. I just wanted to say a little bit about its structure. Basically, there's a short preamble, the title of your proposal, the people that are involved in it, and a little abstract to help you set the stage. That preamble is then followed by the meat of the proposal. What we're asking you to do is to specify individual in-kind contributions that you want to make and write them up in one section of your proposal per contribution. Now, in each of those sections, we've provided some structure for you, and I'll explain why it looks like this in a minute. But basically, we're asking you to provide a little bit of background, your relevant experience and expertise and connections and so on to show why the contribution makes sense. Then to qualitatively describe what you're going to do. Those are the activities that you'll carry out. Then get serious and quantitative about what you will deliver. Those are the deliverables. And then in return for that, what you expect in terms of rights to the LSST data. So we're asking you to estimate how many PIs worth of data rights you should receive in return and why. And then the last part of each section will be the key personnel. Who is it in your team who will be responsible for delivery of this in-kind contribution and reporting on its performance as you go? We also need to know which group will receive the contribution. I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. So yeah, instructions are in violet. You can delete them when you're done. We'll ignore them no matter what. You'll also see that we're asking for not only paragraphs that describe these various things, background, activities, deliverables, we're also asking for one-sentence summaries, which is a bit unusual, but I'll explain where that comes from a bit later. Okay, so the end goal of all of this is to get to a data rights agreement for each of your teams. And we've structured this proposal to try and make that easy. You'll notice that proposal section structure is basically a derivation going from what you can offer through to the end, which is what you think it's worth. Why are we asking it that way around? Well, more or less, it's up to you to open the bidding, having followed the guidelines. That's because we should think of these proposals as being an important opening step in the negotiation of your data rights. So how will that negotiation work? Well, Ruben, that is Bob and I, will negotiate a final PI value with you this fall and winter in the following way. So first, the CEC will review your proposals, and they'll advise the Ruben director on each of those contributions in your proposal, each of their scientific value. We'll also ask Ruben and NUALAB staff to carry out a technical review for feasibility. That's more important for some kinds of contribution than others. But again, they will advise the Ruben director of that. What we'll do for you by December 15th is summarize those reviews for you and indicate to you a counter offer from us in terms of the PI value. We'll do that, and then in January we'll take the we'll take that to our management board and to the US agencies for approval and any modifications they want to make. So from January, after that, we'll then be into negotiating back and forth with you in dialogue with each of your teams until we converge on an agreement for what you will do in return for how many PIs worth of data rights. So that's how we see things going this fall. So we're calling them proposals, but as you can tell, what we really have in mind is starting to write data rights agreements. And so how to think about this? Well, you're not competing with each other in order to get data rights. There's no limit to how many data rights we can give out. So in fact, what's really going on is we're forming a large international collaboration. And I think we'll get the best out of your in-kind contributions if we all work together to make them work well. So we're doing building a collaboration. We're trying to be inclusive and collaborative. We're here to help you write these proposals in order to help you get data rights. And likewise, you'll be getting help from other places as well. Most obviously the recipient group for each contribution. But there also could be situations where it's helpful to talk to the other teams that are thinking about similar things so that we can coordinate your proposals and make each one of them successful. Okay, so I mentioned recipients for contributions. The idea is that all of the in-kind contributions need to somehow be embedded in a recipient group. Why is that? Well, one of our boundary conditions is that each of these contributions needs to expand the resources available to the US science community. And so the way we've, the basic mechanism for ensuring that that's the case is to make sure that your in-kind contributions are embedded within one of our existing groups. And so there's a number of different groups that can receive in-kind contributions. The science collaborations are one of them. Another one is NOIR that can accept telescope time and data sets. There's the EON network that I'll mention again in a minute, which is a good place to embed a telescope time contribution. We're also setting up various coordination groups to bring subsets of you together to think about things like contributions to the photometric redshift software, for example. So some of you will hear more about those. Okay, so we're here to help this collaboration form and work well together. We have staff at Rubin Observatory who are dedicated to this, and all of them are here today. We have Steve Ridgway, who's at NOIR and also works on the EON network. Greg Medeski is at SLAC, and he and Knut Olsen, who is also at NOIR, they'll be thinking about IDAX coordination with some of you. And then I will be working with Greg on coordinating the software development in-kind contribution proposals and also helping with interactions with science collaborations. So Steve, Greg, and Knut are the Rubin International Program Coordinators, the IPCs, and it's their job to help you get connected and for this to help make this process go well. Okay, so how are we currently helping you turn the best of your LOI ideas into high-value proposed contributions? Well, we sent you feedback. You got a letter, or rather your team leaders got a letter from us that contains some terse but direct guidance about each of your LOI ideas. So hopefully that gives a lot of good starting directions for how to turn those ideas into proposed contributions. The other thing that we did, and the CEC put a lot of effort into this, was we produced this handbook for you. We did it by looking at all of the LOIs together, comparing them with each other and looking for commonalities. We wanted to do that because we wanted to provide homogeneous and also fair feedback to all of you. And the end result turned out to be a handbook that everybody could refer to. So it's a level playing field. So you have your letter, you have the handbook. What we can now do is step through the different kinds of possible contribution you could make. And I thought it might be good to give you some highlights from the handbook to help you understand the feedback and start thinking about the contributions. Before we do that, let me just pause a second and ask Greg. Has anybody been typing in questions about this first part of the slide deck? You're muted at the moment, Greg.
Yes, let me just take a quick look. And what I see so far is there's one group, Yanis Tsapras is asking if we got feedback on 2 of the 5 items we proposed as potential in-kind contributions. Does it mean that the others are not considered as sufficient in-kind contributions?
Good, okay. So what we did was we went through your LOIs and tried to extract each idea separately. And I think we managed to do that in an almost error-free way. But I know that we missed 1 or 2 in one letter. So the first thing is it's possible that we missed one from yours, and so we'll follow up afterwards. We tried to give feedback on all of the ideas that we saw in the LOI.
Okay, the next question comes from Mara Salvato. Out of curiosity, what happens when you receive the same in-kind contribution from different groups? I think you might have answered this already, but go ahead, Phil.
Actually, I don't think I wasn't explicit about it, but it's a good question. So what to do about duplicates? There are actually relatively few of these coming out from your LOIs, which was great. But there were some examples of sort of general areas where teams were looking to make contributions that are very similar to each other. Our approach is the collaborative one. What we're trying to do is where we see possible duplicates is try and coordinate them. So the best example I have is a handful of groups were all interested in contributing software development effort in various ways in the area of photometric redshift estimation and calibration and so on. So what we'll do is we will set up a coordination group led by a member of the community engagement team at the observatory. And then we will work with each group that is looking to make a contribution in this area to try and understand exactly what they want to do. And then we will bring that group together to talk to each other. The idea is to try and help each team craft its contributions so they fit well with others. And we end up with a productive collaboration rather than competing teams. In some cases, it could be that there is benefit to 2 groups doing exactly the same thing. But I think more likely is we'll try and help you coordinate so that you complement each other rather than compete.
All right, another question from Luis Nicolacci da Costa. He is asking, are there values for number of cores and storage listed in the templates, suggestions or requirements? Do they need to be up and running when 2024 according to the new timetable?
That's a question about about computing resources in IDAX. So I think the fact that that's there, let's come back to it when we're on that slide.
Okay.
I'll start going through a slide on each of the different categories of contribution now, and we'll pause after each one so that we can answer.
So there's one more general question, if I maybe should ask this now. The question is, can PI should be reassigned within a team that asks for more than 1 PI? From Sebastian Bouquet.
Yes. So in general, the idea is that the team will make in-kind contributions, typically several per proposal, but not always. And in return, the team would be awarded some number of data rights. And then it would be up to the team as to who actually had those data rights, who actually had access to the LSST data. So we would maintain a database of people who would be granted access to the LSST data, but it would be up to you as a team as to who actually had those rights. It certainly doesn't necessarily have to be the people who make the contribution. It's up to the team what they do with their PIs.
Okay, one more very quick question, Phil. Yes, no answer probably. I have a question. Will the current round of letters of intent and proposals be the only chance, or there would be future proposal calls down the line?
I think it's very likely that there'll be future calls. We don't know when yet. We have a lot on our plates at the moment with this initial group of all of y'all. But I think I'm almost certain that there will be additional calls in case we've missed any groups.
Okay, that's all I have for now for the general questions.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, so let's keep going then. Let's look at the different kinds of contribution your team can make. So first up, telescope time. When the CEC was looking at this, we roughly divided it in our heads between big telescope time and small telescope time. Big telescope time is high priority, as you can imagine. Small telescope time, I think, it also has a lot of potential, but we do expect it to come in via the EON network in order to get the best value out of it. So let's say a bit more about types of contribution, unpacking the handbook for you. Basically, there's two ways to contribute telescope time. One is as open time that USPIs could apply for through a NOALAB TAC. And the other is through a so-called active follow-up program. And what that is, this would be where the observations were executed by the facility staff and then reduced data products returned to the USPIs somehow. The target lists for those programs would still be competed for by a NOALAB TAC. So it's just a different way of allocating time to USPIs, but it seemed to be needed just from reading the LOIs in terms of what proposal teams wanted to do. When it comes to the small telescope time, we recommend, in fact, expect that the small telescope time would come in through integration into the EON network, that is the Astronomical Event Observation Network. This is something that's being coordinated by NOALAB, and actually I think is a good opportunity for anybody running a small telescope to really get best value out of it. I think it'll be a very powerful network of observatories all working together. So we're certainly strongly recommending that groups get involved with EON, and Steve Ridgway can help with that integration. Last thing to say about telescope time, you're probably wondering, well, how will the PI data rights value be estimated? How should you estimate the number of PIs for the amount of telescope time you have available? So what we're asking for is for you to take the operational cost of the time, so not the construction cost of instruments, just the operations costs, and then it will be multiplied by a weighting factor that somehow captures the scientific value of the data. And that weight will involve many different aspects, including which hemisphere it's in, what instrumentation is available. There's a number of different things that the handbook goes into. You ought to be able to make a very rough estimate of the weighting factor yourselves. But this is something that the CEC will calculate and can even give you feedback on around September, I think. They'll be able to make that estimate of the weighting factor using data that you provide. So we're going to be asking you to provide basic information about your observing facilities through the telescope and dataset evaluation form, which I'll show you in a second. And we're certainly encouraging you to get started on entering the vital statistics of your observing facilities as soon as possible. So let me just pause to see if there are any questions about telescope time. I'm sure they'll spring to people's minds as we keep going. Okay.
I don't think anything obvious. There's nothing specific about telescope time at the moment.
Right, thank you.
I think one just came up from Stuart.
Okay. Does a 4-meter class telescope like AAT have to be integrated into EON despite being 3.89 meters in diameter?
Okay, so we've found the edge case. Thank you, Stuart. I think we've said less than 4 meters as the guideline. I think it will certainly benefit AAT to be integrated into EON, and because it's less than 4 meters, we probably would expect it to be. But just as a reminder, this is a negotiation, and so some facilities will find it easier to integrate with EON than others, and so let's take that one offline and talk about it. All right, less than 4 meters will be integrated into EON. Yeah.
Michelle Bannister is asking, when does EON integration have to be complete?
Good question. I would say that the time frame to really aim for is probably the first year of survey operations, which, as you heard this morning, you should have in mind as being October 2023 through till the following September. That's year one of the survey. That's when I think we'll benefit most from having live follow-up facilities. Now, it could be that there are some observations that need to be done in advance of the survey, and there could be some benefit for having time available before then. But as a general rule, I think probably in time for the survey. I'm going to pause there and just see whether Steve Ridgway is there and wants to comment on that.
Sure, Phil. We would love to have it at the beginning of the survey and through the full survey, but if it's available for a subset, we can certainly scale the weighting according to that. I would just add, with regard to the previous question, that please keep in mind that if you add EON capability as a part of your in-kind contribution, that you can gain PI credit for that investment. And we feel it would pay off for most telescopes in any event, and that could be an interesting opportunity for you.
All right, there's another question from Michelle Bannister. Is telescope time or actual telescope operating cost considered most significant?
So, most significant. The issue is, how to make an estimate of how many PI's worth of data rights a telescope time contribution is worth. The way we've come up with is the only way we've come up with it is through the operational cost of that time. So if if it's some number of $1,000 per night, and you have so many nights available per year, what you would do is add up the total number of nights, multiply by the cost per night, and that would give the overall operating cost of the contribution. And that's the thing that we would then adjust by the weighting factor, and in the end divide by 300K in order to calculate the number of PIs. So the reason for going through a dollar value is to be able to make an estimate that's comparable to similar estimates we would make on computing resources and software development. And we're trying to compare very disparate things here. And so we have to, at some point, go through a common unit of value, and the chosen unit for us is the dollar. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, should I continue with questions, Phil?
Specifically about telescope time, yes.
Yes.
We'll do one or two more.
Okay, so there's at least two more. One of them goes, does the NOR lab need to be in control of the allocation process, or can time be ring-fenced for US, but through the telescope TAC itself?
I think I might punt this one to Bob, because he's thought a bit about this.
What we've done in the past, and what I would be inclined to do to start with this, is that the NOIR Lab TAC would allocate a certain set of nights based on agreement with the international partner. And the way we usually do that then is we assume that the nights would fall in proportion to the same lunar phase and other observing conditions as every other night considered by the international's TAC. And so we would just be we would then take a set of proposed programs that were approved by the NOIR Lab TAC and work with the scheduling of the international telescope to fit those in. Of course, with AON, things would be dynamically scheduled, and that would be negotiated as a set of overall nights available through AON, and then they could be blocked in certain ways to accommodate the other scheduling that telescope has to do. That's all up for discussion. But the general answer is the NOIR Lab TAC will want to review the proposal.
All right, another question from Michelle Lochner.
Hang on, before you go, Greg, just as a little comment on that. So some of these questions you're asking are probably coming from a place where you have local constraints on what you can and can't do. And so I think if you have a follow-up question to what you're hearing here today, do please put it in the Slack channel for the session so that we can come around and start thinking about your particular problem. Why should we do it there? Basically, it could be that there are other teams in this set of 40 that have similar problems. And so it will be good for them to be able to see our answer to your question. So follow-up questions, please do put them in the Slack channel and we'll come and find them afterwards. Okay, Greg.
Okay, from Michelle Lochner, some proposals might want to contribute follow-up specific science collaborations like TVS or DESC for training sets for transient classification, for example. How would a proposal like this interact with a neural lab tag?
Good. Okay. So there we're sort of getting into the subtle difference between an active follow-up program where USPIs are able to compete for telescope time, and a contributed data set which is taken by the taken at your facility and then reduced, packaged up, and provided to the US science community. And it could be that in some cases what you want to do is better suited to a data set contribution than to a telescope time contribution. And a spectroscopic training set, particularly one that's been taken in the past, could be a valuable data set. You could also imagine one that's partly taken and still to be taken in the future, but the complete data set is the thing that would be of value to the US science community. So when thinking about that kind of contribution, in fact, it's on the next slide, there's some notes in the handbook about how to think about data sets, and there's important things to keep in mind. So I wanted to highlight them to you here. So perhaps I'll just tell you about this slide since we're here. Basically, we're looking for data sets. If they're going to be in-kind contributions, we need them to be supported, and how much they're worth depends a good deal on the circumstances. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about external and proprietary data sets, data that the US astronomers wouldn't be able to access by other means. And they could be either taken in the past, or they could be taken, being taken now, or planned for the future. These data sets, how will they be valued? Well, it will be similar to with the telescope time. We'd need to know how much they cost to make in terms of the telescope time that was used. And then there would be a similar weighting factor to do with the value of the data set, the scientific value, or the science that was enabled by that data set. Now, data sets are kind of expensive, right? There's a lot of human power involved. There's often computing power involved in them. Those aspects of the cost of the data set, we're saying would not count towards the value of this kind of in-kind contribution. Why is that? It's because in most, if not all cases, data sets are taken not only for the purpose of gaining LSST data rights, they're useful for your own ends as well. And so to try and thread that needle, we're saying that let's try and treat them similar to telescope time. You get credit for the telescope time you put in, and then the work that you needed to do to make the data set is something that you get a return from through the expertise that you generate from having the people be close to the data. We'll also need to know where that data set will reside and how it will be supported. So we're not going to be in the business of accepting unsupported data sets. You'll need to provide documentation, some active live human support of the data to enable people to actually make good use of it. And there are guidelines in the handbook for the kind of thing that we'll be looking at. These data sets will need to live, be stored and served from one of the Rubin data access centers, these IDACs that you keep hearing about. And if you have a specific IDAC in mind that would be a good place to host your data set, you'll need to get an endorsement from there. In most cases, this will be easy because it'll probably be your own IDAC from your own proposal. But if there's another IDAC that you're looking to partner with, then we'll need to know that you're planning that collaboration. Okay, last thing about data sets. we saw a number of LOIs wondering about value-added catalogs, where one of the LSST catalogs is federated with an external table or even reconstructed using different algorithms or something. So how to think about this. A value-add catalog where the thing that you do is you recompute the measurements or you make new measurements based on the LSST images. That's really a software contribution. That's how we would consider that. If you make a value-added catalog by joining one of the LSST catalogs with an external table that you provide, then it's that external table that is the thing of value. And that would be the data set that you are contributing. So again, there's notes in their handbook about value-added catalogs that's worth reading carefully if you're interested in going this way. Now, I hope that answered in a very long-winded way the question that you brought up, Greg.
I don't think so.
You see any other questions coming up about data sets?
There is nothing about data sets. There's just one more about telescope time. Is that dollar value the same regardless of the dollar values in the original MOAs, which is from Serhat Moore? And that's a complicated one because it has to do with exchange rates and all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, okay, so I can make a general comment about this. So in all of this, we are leaving the previous MOAs behind. What we're trying to do is maintain some kind of approximate logical link with the past exchange rate that was used in your previous MOAs, those of you that had them. But we're trying to take a fresh look. And so the link to the past has already been made via the rough guidance about 300K per PI. But now we need to work through this negotiation process where we bring in these weighting factors that are to do with scientific value and so on. And so the way to think about exchange rates are they're approximate and they may change on a case-by-case basis. And what you're really doing is entering into a conversation with Rubin as to estimated value of things. So I think you have enough to get started with a rough estimate. That's a bid, and then over the course of the next couple of seasons, fall and winter, we'll talk more and more about the value of your contribution as we go through. Good, and Bob isn't trying to say something, so I think I got that right. Okay, let's keep going because we don't have
yeah, no more questions.
Infinite time. Good. So I mentioned this form. You may have noticed this in your proposals. There is a little line under the abstract that says link to the evaluation form. That was a dead link in the proposal document that we gave you. We now have the telescope and dataset evaluation form ready for you to use. At the end of this week, I'll send an email to the proposal leads with the link, but you can already follow it from this slide deck and go and see what we're going to be asking for. Both these blue texts here, they're links to the same place. It's a single Google spreadsheet that we're going to ask all of the teams looking to contribute data sets or telescope time to edit together. So welcome to the large international collaboration. We're all going to be editing the same Google sheet. I think it should be straightforward, but we have the IPCs to help, and in particular, Steve Ridgway is going to be paying attention to this and helping you put in what you need to do. Essentially, we're looking for one row of this spreadsheet per contribution to explain or to give the basic data, basic information about the active follow-up program that you have in mind, or the data set that you have in mind. We'll also need to collect information about the facility that you will use to do that active follow-up program. And so please do jump in there, start adding rows. You'll need your program code and your contribution number, various things that allow us to relate the data in this form, this spreadsheet, to the text in your proposal. But I think if you take a look, it ought to make sense. What the CEC will do with the IPC's help, they will read the data from that worksheet to their own analysis sheet, and they'll use it to start estimating contribution values. which will help you and us figure out how many PIs are worth your time. So I think we ought to be able to give feedback about the value of particular contributions by early September. The sooner you start putting information into this spreadsheet, the sooner we'll be able to get back to you with an estimated value. So I encourage you to please to jump in there and start editing. With the following caveat, because we're all collaborating on the single spreadsheet, please take care not to overwrite the other team's data. Okay, so real quick, here's what it looks like. Here are two screenshots from two of the tabs in this Google spreadsheet. You see here, the blue one is collecting data about your observing facility. For example, its name and its aperture size and fraction of downtime per year, all that kind of thing. And you can see that we'll be joining that information with information in a different tab. Here in yellow, you see the active follow-up program tab, where we're asking for things like who's going to be leading this contribution, responsible for its delivery, what's the contribution number, the section number from your proposal, so that we can connect back and make everything make sense. So there's a README that explains all this as well. I encourage you to go take a look, start adding rows, and please do reach out if you need help. Steve Ridgway is your main point of contact, but Bob and I can redirect as always. Any questions about this telescope and dataset evaluation form?
Okay, there's one question from Sarah Bro. Says, Google Sheet can lose contributions or potentially get overwritten accidentally by somebody else. Will it be up to proposal teams to keep a backup copy?
It won't be, I don't think you're required to do that. The more worried of you might want to do that, but the version history will contain past work. So if there is a mishap, and we hope there won't be, but if there is a mishap, if you let us know, we'll be able to dig back in the version history and recover your previous enterings. But I think Sarah's question is highlighting to you why it's important to go carefully when editing this sheet. Please do add a row as you need it, but do take care not to edit the cells in other people's rows.
There is another question, but I'm not sure if this is relevant to telescope and telescope time, but let me read it anyway. Are the categories of contributions mutually exclusive, i.e., under no circumstances can a contribution count as data set and as a software development contribution?
That's right. We're looking for mutually exclusive contributions. If you've read the handbook and you really think that what you're doing is both data set and software, get in touch. But I think we've tried to set it up so that it's clean and it will be either software or data. Okay, let's keep going. We've got 15 minutes left before we all collapse in an exhausted heap. All right, so next type of contribution, software development. CEC put a lot of thought into how to handle software development. This is effort applied either in one of the Rubin Observatory teams or much more commonly in one of the science collaborations. So the question is how to embed software development effort such that it meets the criteria for an eligible in-kind, how to make sure that it adds value, that it expands the resources available to the US science community. Basically, we need that software development effort to be integrated into the recipient group, which is we're looking for your software developers to join the team and be an active part of it. This way of thinking led us to some terminology that you should become familiar with. There's two types of software development effort, roughly speaking, directable and non-directable. Directable means that the developer shows up in the team and makes a work plan together with that team and then works on what that team needs. That's directable effort. Non-directable effort is potentially less valuable. It's the other kind. It's where you already know what you want to make, the package that you want to build, and you just want to go and do that. Now, the problem is that that may not be what the US science community needs. And so non-directable effort, potentially less valuable, may get a lower exchange rate depending on how the review goes, certainly needs to be endorsed up front. Now, it could be happily that the thing that the specific package that your team wants to make is something that that one of the science collaborations or Rubin Observatory needs. That's great if it's the case. We just like to know in your proposal that your non-directable effort has been endorsed by the recipient group. So that means some outreach is needed on your part. Get in touch with the recipients and talk to them about what you want to do. Now, directable effort, I said, was higher value. Even higher value is what we're calling general pooled effort. That's where you say, hey, we have a team of software developers. They don't mind, we don't mind what they work on. Can you find something useful for them to do? And the answer is going to be yes. Could be in a science collaboration, could be in a Rubin Observatory team. And it's actually quite helpful for us to have a pool of those software developers throughout the survey, in fact. And so if you're in a position to offer that, and not everyone is because of funding constraints, but if you are, you can get a better exchange rate and it's something of high value. It's a way that we can try and make sure that we have all of our bases covered for making LSST science go well. All right, this is, should be clear to everybody, but not everyone can and should be developing software. We think you should focus on dedicated contributions by computing professionals and skilled postdocs, data scientists and so on. And in order for their contributions to be high value, as you know, you need someone focusing at least half time in order to be really productive in most cases. So the handbook explains typically we're looking for 0.5 FTE contributions from software developers. You'll also see in the handbook that we're asking for your teams to commit to building and maintaining durable, reusable software and doing it in a collaborative way. And that makes sense because of this need to embed these contributions for the benefit of the US science community. Okay, so there's quite a lot to read in the handbook. Hopefully that's a good potted summary to get you started. Do you see any questions, Greg, about software development?
Not that I see anything about software development. Let me look once again. No. I would suspect that a lot of questions about software development will be coming along when people are looking. Oh, there's one from Eduardo. Sorry about that. Eduardo is asking, let me just find it. He said that he had a question about, he claims that there was a question. Oh yeah, there are questions. This is actually sent way early today. These are the questions. Question 1. If this kind of contribution was not explicitly mentioned in the letter of intent, can it still be part of the proposal?
Absolutely, yes. It's never too late to make your software development contribution directable or even better, generally pooled.
Okay. Second question from Eduardo is, if we wanted to contribute with one or more people towards this effort, should we start advertising those positions to this fall to start in 2021, i.e., we would advertise the positions before knowing the outcome of our proposals, or would it be too early?
That feels a bit early to me. I saw Bob just unmuted, so he might have a comment on that.
I was going to comment on the prior question because I'm not sure we got the sense of it right. I think it was asking generally if new ideas for contributions could be contributed. Good. Okay. So yes, we can generalize my answer. I was enthusiastic about you changing your mind about what you wanted to do. That's true for all aspects of your LOI. If you have new ideas that you've had since last fall, please feel free to include them in your proposal. You can also modify the ideas from your LOI in order to make them higher value proposal contributions.
Okay, there's a third question from Eduardo. Should I go on?
Well, I think just to give Eduardo some clarity, I think FY21 is probably too soon for us to use, especially because we won't have figured out the data rights agreements. But the following year, I can imagine there being good uses across the enterprise. I can imagine there being good applications for generally pooled software development effort. You should also think about stretching it out in time. I think it could be useful to have this pool going through the survey as well. So it's not that we're looking for a lot of contributions in the early years. If you're able to contribute over an extended period of time, that would be great.
And finally, the third question has to do with the Rubin Observatory being involved in selection of the person. Let me read it. To ensure that the hired personnel for this task have the appropriate skill levels, it'd be good if somebody from Rubin Observatory could be involved in the selection process. Perhaps drafting the job ad or simply having a look at a short list of candidates before a job offer is made, or something like this envisioned.
I think that is certainly something we can help with. I think the thing we'd envisioned in the handbook was more along the lines of helping with job adverts, but I think it's something we can work with you on. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. We've got 10 minutes left, I think.
There's 3 more questions.
Let's keep going, Greg. So next type of category, we have the computing resources. A number of you looking at making independent data access centers. In fact, we're strongly encouraging those of you with computing resources to contribute your resources in the form of an IDAC. The alternative is a so-called scientific processing center where you don't enable Rubin authentication. That's likely to be less value, both to the community and to you, I think. Joining the IDAC network, where there's uniform authentication across the system, with similar computing environments, uniform database schema, and so on, will benefit everybody, including you, because you'll be part of a network that can help each other out. So I mentioned this earlier, Greg and Knut will be coordinating all of you thinking about proposing IDACs, and they'll try and get you in touch with each other to understand the technical requirements for an IDAC, as well as think about how you can work together in a common network. Technical requirements are in a tech note written by the Rubin team. It's RTN 003. There's a link to it here and also in the handbook. This contains the information you need to figure out whether you can contribute and support an IDAC. And in particular, there's a checklist in the appendix that we've more or less translated into the example proposal in the handbook to allow you to go through and confirm that you'll be able to do all the things that are needed to make an IDAC. So we're quite excited about the possibility of a network of IDACs. The level of resources you need to provide can vary quite widely. Only the full IDACs need to support the Rubin Science platform, although it could be good if others want to do it. Other light IDACs can provide their own interface to the LSST data, and so may not need to provide as many resources. So do please check out that tech note and use that to guide your proposal writing. Now, I know that Luis asked a question about this. I think, Luis, the answer to your question about computing resources and how much is needed for an IDAC, it's all in this tech note. So I encourage you to look at that carefully and then work with Greg and Knut and the other teams to figure out your proposal.
Luis also had another question having to do with whether the graphic card type data centers can be used, or it has to be something that is really more sort of old-fashioned.
So I think the thing to do is to look at the basic requirements in the tech note to get to the state of you're an IDAC. And then you can think more creatively about what kind of resources will be useful to provide in association with that. And it could well be that significant GPU resources could be of high value. And so it's worth thinking along those lines, get some feedback from your contacts in the LSST science community and put together a proposal. Okay, let's keep going. We've got 5 minutes left before we finish. And so I'll go fairly quickly through these slides. You have the link to them, so you can go back and refer to them. But I do want to show you just a little bit of what's going to happen to your proposal. There's also a new thing that I wanted to highlight to you, which is on the next slide. So those of you that have proposed to make contributions to Rubin construction, commissioning, or operations, you already know who you are, and we're working with you directly. That's why the handbook doesn't contain very much information for you, but we're already in conversation, so that's okay. The new thing for all of you is some recognition of some management effort that will be needed on your part to make this work. So let's wind back a bit. When the or in-kind contributions are live, we'll need to keep track of their performance and solve problems if they occur. And so here's the system we're putting in place for that. Each contribution needs a named lead who is responsible for delivery of that contribution and also reporting on it. We're thinking roughly annually. We, as you saw, we have international program coordinators. What they will do is they'll collect the reports from all the different contribution leads and arrange for them to be evaluated by the recipient groups. How well is it going, recipients? And also the CEC, who may have recommendations on scientific value and so on. The Rubin director and the IPCs will then take all of that, all of those reports and reviews, summarize them to the resource board so that it can coordinate on solutions to problems that come up. Remember, the resource board not yet stood up. We expect it to be where the US agencies and your own funding agencies talk to each other about what needs to happen. Now, in order to solve problems in your country, that the reporting needs to feed back to you, and then changes may need to happen. And I think to make those changes happen and also to make sure that the reporting happens is going to need a little bit of program management effort on your part. How much is needed will vary from program to program depending on its size. But we only deal in integer numbers of PI values. So recognizing that this is real work, we're saying that each proposal team can count on an additional PI's worth of data rights in return for doing this needed program management work. So this is a new thing. You may have seen it in the handbook. I wanted to highlight it to you. There's a small amount of reporting work, of course, from these contribution leads that should be counted in the management effort, not in the technical contribution effort. So they should go ahead and spend 50% of their time developing software, and then additionally to that, they'll need to work on reporting. But we'll try and set it up so that it's all relatively low burden. But we did want to recognize that we're asking for some management effort here and reward it accordingly. Okay, let's keep going in the last few minutes just to give you a sense of what else is in this slide deck. In the handbook, there are example proposal sections. Do note that the Google Doc version of the handbook is much easier to copy and paste from than the PDF. So look for the link in your proposal document that links to the handbook. That link takes you to the Google Doc link. If you can't find it, just get in touch with us and we can provide the link on request. But the Google Doc version is easier to copy and paste from. And we imagine you doing a lot of copying and pasting when putting together your proposal. In fact, Louise had a question in Slack. Can we adopt your wording? Yes, please do. We tried to write the examples to help you in exactly that way. Okay, just a very short piece here on what's going to happen to your proposal. Here's a picture of what your proposal looks like, or rather each section of your proposal describing a specific in-kind contribution. We're asking for a title and then a description followed by a one-line summary in each of the subsections. So background, activities, deliverables, data rights. And I mentioned these one-sentence summaries are a bit unusual. Why are we asking for one-sentence summaries? It's because we're going to do this with your proposal. We're going to chop out the one-sentence summaries and we're going to paste them together into a draft statement of work that would go into a data rights agreement. The longer form parts of your proposal, the one-paragraph sections, we'll chop those out and paste them together into a detailed plan. The detailed plan is the thing that we would have on our desks to refer to as you make the contribution. Whereas the one-line summaries are the thing that will get written into the data rights agreement and signed off by the agencies. So that's why we asked for the summary as well as the paragraph. I think it's useful to know this when you're writing your one-line summary. So we'll do this as soon as we get your proposal in September. We'll separate it out into a draft statement of work and a draft detailed plan. And we'll actually then work with those things from then on so that we're already have taken a big step towards a data rights agreement. Okay, so there's a little illustration of what we're doing, actually taking sentences from one place, moving them to another part. I also highlight down here in the bottom right-hand corner that the statement of work will list the responsible individuals. And so the contribution lead and the program manager will be listed in the data rights agreement. And that's so that the coordinators will know who to come asking for reports. Okay, so 6 weeks isn't long, as I said this morning, but hopefully you have enough information, maybe too much information, but enough information to enable you to turn your LOI ideas into high value proposed contributions. So we'll continue this conversation that we started today. Working in that Google document directly, you can ask us questions via inline comments. We'll be able to see what you're writing as you write it, which is cool because we're all collaborators here. What we're trying to do is help you write a good proposal. The handbook contains a directory of recipient groups to help you reach out to them to get the feedback that you need beyond what you've already had. The recipient groups likely use Slack as well as email. Maybe they're more comfortable in LSST Slack than in email. If you need an invitation to LSSTC Slack, please just let us know and we can arrange that. Temporary science collaboration membership is available for those of you who aren't already in science collaborations but need to be for this summer's work. And so Bob and I remain your points of contact overall. We can help redirect as needed. But now you know that you have 3 international program coordinators, Knut, Steve, and Greg, also looking to help you out as well. And as we go through the summer, we'll try and stay in touch as a community, and we'll figure out these proposals together. Okay, Greg, are there any final questions? I think we've just gone over our hour, but
there are short questions. Luis da Costa says, are the word limits very strict?
They're not strict in the sense that we'll reject proposals if you go one word over the limit. They're there to try and help you stay concise. We need to limit the amount of the number of words that the CEC will have to read, and we want you to stay on target. So what is it you're contributing in return for what? And so we're looking for brevity in your proposals.
Then Elisa Cisari is asking, can the program manager be scientific staff, or does one need to hire someone specifically for the role?
It can be scientific stuff.
That's what I thought, right. And finally, from Stuart Ryder, will each contribution lead be rewarded with 1 PI's worth of access and recognition of their program management effort, or will there be only 1 PI's worth per in-kind partner?
It's one bonus PI per team. And that's because the amount of management overhead that the contribution lead will have to do is very small. So they're only earning a small fraction of a PI's worth of data rights.
Okay, and there's finally one question from Michelle Lochner. It's a little lengthy, so do we have time to read it?
There's a question from JJ from earlier as well that I'd really like to know the answer to.
Okay.
Let's, if you don't mind, Michelle, let's hear JJ's because I worry that we may have missed it in the churn. And I'm happy to stay on and answer questions as long as needed. But I recognize that some people might need to drift away. We'll stay in touch, of course.
Yeah, somebody else mentioned that there was a question from JJ. I don't seem to be able to find it. Oh yeah, here it is. For directed effort, I guess there would be a scope/area of expertise within which the directed effort is restricted. So we can say we will contribute development effort to certain subsystems such as or such via mutual agreement. Yeah,
that sounds about right. The thing about the directed effort, it's an attitude as much as anything. It's making someone available to do the work that's needed within the team. If the team needs exclusively Python or C++ experience or something like that, then that would be an additional constraint on the directable effort. But the main thing about directable effort is that it's someone who shows up willing to work on what that group needs, rather than only working on something that your proposal team wants to build.
Okay, so let me read the question from Michelle, if you're willing to stay for a little longer. She writes, I'm afraid I'm confused and want to ask my previous question again. Imagine we have a telescope and want to contribute spectroscopic follow-up of transients as our contribution. Say, we are already collaborating with the science collaboration such as transient and variable sources or dark energy science collaboration to provide this follow-up as a training set for classifiers. We obviously wouldn't want to go through the NORA lab telescope allocation committee because the follow-up is supposed to serve a specific purpose for this collaboration. However, from page 14 of the handbook, data acquired in response to LSST alerts or measurements, whether in support of time domain or static sky science, are referred to as active follow-up programs, which implies any time domain follow-up has to go through the TAC. I'm confused about how we can provide the required data set to the collaboration in this case, since the TAC could allocate the time to someone else for a different set of targets than the science collaboration may want.
Yeah, so I think the key thing that Michelle's asking here is, if a program is already defined, what to do? Do we really need to change it?
I think that's right.
I would say in this particular case, we're looking at an exception to the rule, and we should talk about it. I think in general for telescope time in the future, for follow-up of LSST targets, it should go through the NOAA TAC process. But if there's already a program like the one that Michelle's describing that's already existing, it's already providing value to the US science community through a science collaboration, then that's something we should look at. We should look at separately. I hope that clears up the confusion, Michelle.
Finally, there's one from Stella. If for one team, each future PI has totally independent proposal, how do we have to structure our application?
Can you say the first part again? In the future, if there's...
It says, if for one team, each future PI has totally independent proposal, how do we have to structure our application, our proposal?
Good. So I think the structure already is well suited to that. Each PI would just write their own contribution section. And, well, we shouldn't use the word PI. Each contribution lead should write their own contribution section and say how many PIs worth of data rights for the team it is worth. And so I think I'm, in the LMU Munich case, for example, where Stella is from, there are 3 faculty members, each looking to make within their group a particular contribution. And so I would say that each contribution lead, each faculty member should write a section of the proposal and then say how many PIs worth of data rights that would cover.
If I might add here, we sort of
the value in doing that, of course, is that then
one of the
if there are oh, sorry.
We were sort of envisioning that kind of possibility, and I think one of our examples is just that, with multiple contributions from one institution.
All right,
I think we're probably
what happened there was we got
questions. I don't know if there's anybody else. If you please go ahead and raise your hand in the case if I missed you. No, I don't see any raised hands. Phil, I suspect that if somebody comes up with a really pressing question, they can join in tomorrow and ask that question at the session tomorrow, which is a little earlier in the second rather than third slot. Would you think it's okay?
You can do that if you want. I know people are pushed for time though. So if we didn't get to your question today, do please type it into the Slack channel for this session and I'll continue to answer questions there as well.
Okay, very good. Sorry for my noise. I think that gardeners appeared, my neighbors.
No, that's okay. It's okay. I think Stella's question did highlight something which we should clear up though just before we go, which is that there's a logical distinction between a PI that has data rights and the lead of a contribution. And so the person that is responsible for delivering the contribution, that contribution may be worth several PIs worth of data rights. And so it could well be that that contribution lead earns their own data rights but they could also be earning data rights for their colleagues as well. So I think the way to think about your proposal is separate the contributions into logical blocks, make sure there's a different contribution lead for each one, and then estimate how many PIs worth of data rights that contribution will lead to. And just have in mind that the contribution lead is the one that is probably going to write the proposal and will be responsible for the delivery of the contribution. And then the number of PIs and the names of the PIs, that's for you as a team to figure out later once the data rights have been awarded. Okay, I hope that helps everybody.
Yeah, let me just add one more thing. We want you to succeed. We don't want to be very strict about throwing things out. So this is really an inclusive process.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so I think if there are no more live questions, we might get off Zoom at the end of a long Zoom day, and I'll see you on the Slack channel in case there's anything, any follow-ups you want to take care of. And then we'll be in touch with each of your teams throughout the summer as we help you work towards this deadline.
Phil, there is one more quick question from Sandro. Can somebody who is already a PI not through in-kind contributions contribute a fraction of her time in the letter of intent?
Absolutely, yes. So some people do have data rights already, and that certainly doesn't stop you helping your team succeed.
That's right. And there is, of course, plenty of thank you notes. So I think that this was a really, in my opinion, very informative.
Well, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. Let's see on Slack how many things we still need to clear up. But yeah, we're looking forward to working with you all throughout the summer. So thanks very much for staying longer. We'll see you on Slack again. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thanks, Phil.